There was one in the DC area a couple of years ago that did a lot of shaking as well. I mean, it's not uncommon to have those earthquakes in the east. They're just not usually as powerful as they are out west, where I'm sure they probably do have earthquake drills.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting, and I'm certainly not, a seismologist, but I saw some reporting on television that says something about the nature of the rock in the East Coast allows it to be felt a further distance from the fault. I had a friend in New Haven, Connecticut, who told me the window, the window shook and the things hanging on his wall shook. He's a good 2 hour drive, hour and 45-minute drive from me. I have another former student who lives in Cortland, New York, which is kind of up in the Finger Lakes region, and he told me that his house shook. We saw reports out of Philadelphia and parts of the Delmarva Peninsula. So for me, I think that was the more interesting part, is just how far away people had shaking homes and shaking buildings when the epicenter was apparently in central New Jersey.
Yeah, on this map I have basically all from north and west of Scranton, all up and down the I-95 corridor, people were able to feel that earthquake. We didn't here in southern West Virginia, at least I didn't. At least none of the viewers actually said they felt it for sure. But definitely interesting. Have you felt any aftershocks since?
So it's funny you mentioned the aftershock. Last night I was getting ready to go out and have dinner with a friend, and I'm just stepping out of my bathroom to put my shoes on, and I started to hear like a low rumbling sound. And I would have likened it to, a lot of times we have helicopters that fly over at a low altitude, or NYPD chopper will come overhead, and it kind of causes this little bit of a rumbling feeling in the house. It almost felt like as if someone had a subwoofer for a sound system like in the ceiling, right? So I'm hearing this rumble, and I'm saying to myself, is that another one? Is that another one? So I'm kind of standing still and trying to hold on to things just to see if I can feel any gyrations. I didn't feel anything in terms of the aftershock, but I definitely heard it. I definitely felt the rumble. It felt like the vibration of a helicopter overhead. And then when I got to the restaurant 15 minutes later, we're getting alerts on the phone going, hey, we just had a 4.0 aftershock. And I said, that's what I felt when I came out of the bathroom.
You got a notification on your phone about it?
Yes. So in New York City, the local emergency management office has an alert system called Notify NYC. And they utilize the emergency alert system network, which you're probably quite familiar with as a broadcaster, but it triggers an alert on everybody's cell phone, everybody's smartwatch, and it has that same sound that you're used to hearing on television, that high pitched kind of
Yeah.
computer sound. I won't imitate it here. But everybody's cell phone's going off saying, yeah, there was just an aftershock. Right around the 6 o'clock, I don't know, it was like 6:15 or somewhere in the 6 o'clock hour last night. So when I was sitting at the restaurant having dinner with my friend and I got that alert, I said, that's what I felt when I was putting my shoes on out of the bathroom, was that rumbling that felt like a helicopter overhead.
So how long after the initial earthquake did you get the notification on your phone?
The initial earthquake happened at 10:27 and 47 seconds. And I already know that because I have surveillance video from my classroom. I think there was some criticism because the New York City Office of Emergency, or let me start that over. I think there was a little bit of criticism because the New York City's Office of Emergency Management didn't manage to get that alert out till about 40 minutes after the initial earthquake at 10:27. So, and I think sort of the reasoning they gave, and you'd have to check their press conference, but they wanted to confirm what it was because it's something we're not used to. And so, of course, the 911 line started lighting up, and people were just sort of reacting like, "What is that?" So I think it took OEM some time to like reach out to U.S. Geological Survey and reach out to different agencies just to confirm exactly what it was. But the first alert was about 40 minutes after the initial earthquake, and then when we had the aftershock that I felt before dinner last night, I would say that alert came within about 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, they were probably expecting aftershocks because when you have any magnitude earthquake that's, decent, you're going to have aftershocks, and the USGS service had indicated that more would potentially happen even over the next couple of days.
Yeah, and I, I'm interested to see what happens with the aftershocks. I'm almost a little worried that they weren't like pre-shocks and there's a bigger one coming, because I don't know much about geology and seismology, but I've seen other things before where you'll get small ones before a big one. So I'm hoping that there's not a big one in the kettle ready to go. Yeah, well, I'll be sort of a little more hyper aware when I hear that rumble that sounds like something's going on, as to sort of stop what I'm doing and taking note.
Yeah, so you said it was the first one you've ever experienced, first earthquake.
First earthquake I've ever experienced, and it really took me a good 2 or 3 minutes to understand what I had just experienced because, again, it just sounded like somebody rumbling something heavy down the hall, but then there was more movement than that. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a new experience, and I'm certainly not jealous of the folks who live on the West Coast and have to deal with these on a regular basis, especially the ones that are highly destructive.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you've been in the New York City metro for, at least 10 or 15 years because of all the air traffic and all the, general movement in New York City. You were able to discern from the low frequency of it and the feel of it that it was an earthquake. It wasn't a plane flying overhead or a file cabinet.
hmm
Like,
And another thing I would liken it to, and I don't experience this so much because I don't spend a lot of time in Manhattan. I'm in one of the outer boroughs, but a lot of buildings in Manhattan will rumble because of the subway going underneath.
yeah,
So
that's
when you have a building with subway tracks underneath, you feel a low rumble, the building shakes, and it's just like, oh, the 5 train is here. You know what I'm saying? People don't think anything of it. So I would have to imagine that a lot of people in Manhattan probably wrote it off as a subway thing. Another thing I found interesting was, the school that I teach in is a 7-story building. And I'm right on the ground floor. My classroom's on ground floor. A lot of folks we spoke to on the upper floors, 5, 6, and 7, didn't feel it. And I was a little surprised by that. I would have hazarded a guess that the higher they were, the further away from the ground, that it would have been magnified. You know what
shake.
I'm, yeah, because they're further away. It's almost like when you zoom with a camera, the further you zoom, any kind of shaking is magnified because you're further away. So, but no, the most of the students and teachers I spoke to on the upper floors of the building reported not feeling a thing. But those of us on the first floor, definitely myself and at least 2 or 3 other adult colleagues came running to my room that they had felt it.
The final question, were all of the students, did they continue to stay in focus for the rest of the school day?
Um, the students did stay focused for most of the day. I actually deviated my lesson plan for my last class period, my last 2 class periods, to show the media coverage because I teach a media communications course. I teach television broadcasting journalism. So I deviated from what I was doing that day to say, look, here's how we do breaking coverage. Here's how we do, oh my goodness, this just happened. Because what you had a lot of the New York City news stations doing was they had field reporters out all over the region covering their stories of the day. So they were able to just throw a switch, turn on their microwave van, turn on their live stream, and hear from a reporter in New Jersey who was there about, a flooding river story and felt the earthquake. Talked to a reporter in Westchester who was there about some other run-of-the-mill day story. And they were getting these live reports back from the reporters in the field who all felt this. And so I thought it was interesting to show my students sort of how they made that 90-degree turn, that right turn, to change their coverage to immediate live coverage and immediate earthquake coverage. So yes, I deviated my class that day by nature of what I teach. But I think from what I heard from the rest of the building, it was basically business as usual because most people didn't feel it.
The total solar eclipse coming up on Monday, it's grabbed national attention. Schools are dismissing early.
Mhm.
Are you doing any specific focus on that day?
So perhaps unfortunately for us, the New York City Department of Education is not ending classes early that day. Um, I would like to see that happen only because the eclipse is scheduled to take place right around the time that students are dismissed. And so, our regular dismissal at our school is 2:20 p.m. Well, as you know, they're saying peak in our area is supposed to be around 2:10. Not peak, I'm sorry. The beginning is 2:10. Peak is around 3:25. So we do have a couple of our earth science classes, students who are learning about this sort of thing anyway. The school went out and purchased, a couple big bulk boxes of the safety glasses. And so we will have some classes. We have an outdoor, I call it a patio, but it's sort of like an outdoor deck concrete area because we're a couple of buildings attached to each other. And they'll be going out during 8th period to watch, the beginning of the eclipse. And I'm sure a lot of students will choose to stay past dismissal time because that's when it's going to get the most exciting. So yeah, I mean, we're not doing anything building wide. We are a 7-story building with 2,000 students, but we do have some earth science classes who are going to take advantage of the opportunity and get outside and check it out for themselves.